City Center Radio is episode 340, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2025. Welcome back to the show, and we have a good one for you today. I've got an interview with Steve Palmer. He is the founder, managing partner, and chief vision officer of the Indigo Road Hospitality Group. So excited to talk to him. He has been a pillar in Charleston for many, many years. The Indigo Road Hospitality Group is behind some of the most popular restaurants in Charleston and beyond, as they've expanded some of their concepts to other cities and other states even. You're likely familiar, well, if not all of the restaurants, at least a few of them, because they are well known and most of them have been here for years. Today, we're going to talk about Oak Steakhouse, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary, which is pretty incredible. But you might know some of their other projects, One Broad, which, of course, is at One Broad Street. Also in the Charleston area, we have Oku. They're also behind Bar Mash and Mercantile. So Mercantile and Mash, in the old cigar factory building. They have that space there as well. There's a pretty new, I think last year is when it opened, facility. It's called The View at Morrison Yard. It's like an event space at the Morrison Yard building downtown near the Ravenel Bridge. And the list goes on and on. The King's Tide is another one of their newer restaurants, and plenty of others. Daco, they keep coming back to my head. There's just so many. Cocktail Club, another great spot in town. So, like I said, if you didn't recognize the hospitality group name or even Steve's name, you definitely know the restaurants and properties that he works with. So, very excited to talk to him about Oak, what's changed, what hasn't, what it's like celebrating 2 decades of a restaurant in Charleston. And then we also talk about some of the other things that he's involved with, including Ben's Friends, which is an incredible organization helping people in the hospitality industry deal with addiction issues. He talks about that. He also has launched a new podcast that only has 1 episode so far with another local chef, Mike Latta from The Ordinary and Fig, what he's best known for. And so it's a really great conversation, and I encourage you to go to the show notes. I'm going to have links to everything, whether it's the restaurants he talks about or Ben's Friends, and of course the podcast as well. So just a great chat with Steve Palmer, who, like I said, just one of the big names here in Charleston, especially in the hospitality industry. Just so many great restaurants, bars, event spaces, and they are showing no signs of slowing down. So was honored to talk with Steve, and here it is now. Enjoy it. And joining me now is Steve Palmer. As promised, he is the founder, managing partner, and chief vision officer of the Indigo Road Hospitality Group. We're here to talk about a special anniversary they are celebrating this year. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having us.
Of course, happy to do it. And we're here to talk about Oak Steakhouse, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this month. Congratulations on that milestone. I guess the first thing we could talk about is just a little bit of the history of Oak, because it's this basically the start of the Indigo Road Hospitality Group, but you also weren't a part of it right away, correct?
So I came on, Oak Steakhouse was opened in 2005. Brett McKee was the chef partner at the time, and I came on in 2009. I had started the Indigo Road as a consulting company,
Okay.
it was 2009, the depths of the recession. And I met the partners that are still my partners today, Mike Meyer and Andy O'Keefe, and they said, hey, we're not, doing as well as we'd like. Could you come on? And I flew to New York and met them, and I shared my vision for growing a hospitality company. Could have never in a million years imagined what it would become, but and so grateful and blessed. So I came on about 4 years into Oak, so about 16 years ago.
Okay, very nice. And as you said, you came on, made some changes, had some ideas of growth, and here we are, the restaurant 20 years later. And like you said, everything has grown, multiple restaurants under the group, including, multiple versions of the same concepts and things. It must be quite amazing looking back. Like you said, you weren't on board exactly at the beginning, but close enough to look back at everything that's happened since then must be pretty incredible.
It is. I mean, we brought Jeremiah Bacon on as our chef partner not long after that, and from that partnership came the Macintosh, Oku, Cocktail Club, and Daco, kind of all here in Charleston, and Oak has really evolved. Jeremiah brought in the approach of cooking seasonally, which is not a novel concept, except it is in steakhouses. And so,
Mm,
Jeremiah was from here, and he really started looking at the seafood through a local lens. And so it really kind of shifted. I think when you look at what the quote unquote traditional steakhouse was 15, 16 years ago, and I can't say this enough. That also was a time when Upper King was starting to boom. We opened
right,
the
right.
Oak, we opened the first Oku, which just blows my mind. Next month will be 15 years ago.
Wow.
I know, right? And Broad Street had kind of gotten quiet, and I will forever be grateful for the South of Broad neighborhood that really, over the years, have just adopted the restaurant as their own. You come in on a Sunday night, and it is the same folks dining every Sunday night. It's kind of become their like clubhouse, and so it really Oak and what the ripple effect that Oak has had on the Indigo Road is really a story about embracing the local food, the local food ways, and the neighborhood embracing us. And really, it's just a kind of a love story between Charleston. I moved here in '89 to go to college, and I mean, I've been working in restaurants in Charleston ever since. So, very, very grateful for all the support that this city has given and continues to give.
You mentioned bringing on Chef Bacon and the changes that he made to the menu. Is that what's changed the most since when you first, joined on? Was it the fact that the change to the menu with the seasonal concepts, or have there been some other bigger changes since that time frame?
No, I mean, I think that obviously, um, that one change has a ripple effect every season, right? So, I think that we last year we did about an $800,000 renovation just to, you know, shine her up again. But
Hmm.
Oak, and I think a lot of it is because of its address, right? I mean, it was a bank in the 1800s. I mean, Oak is a classic steakhouse. So I think there are things that should change, like the menu, but I
Hmm.
also think there are things that shouldn't change. I think that people, different than some of our other concepts. A steakhouse is a truly American concept. I think it's one of the few, maybe the diner. But I think that there are things that people come to. The draw of a steakhouse is what's familiar. Um, and I think that there are certain things about Oak that haven't changed. The warm, friendly service. I mean, we have servers that have been there the entire time that the restaurant's been open.
Wow, it's incredible.
The way we embrace the neighborhood. So I would say that the wine list has gotten more extensive over the years. I think the cocktail program has modernized, meaning it's not just Manhattans and old fashions anymore.
Mhm.
I think the bartenders have gotten creative, but at its core, classic is classic.
That certainly makes sense. So it seems like if someone was there on your day one or around that time frame and hasn't come back, and all of a sudden they walk in tonight, probably going to have basically the same feel based on what you're saying, and a couple things on the menu that have been there from the beginning. But otherwise, maybe just some dishes that they didn't experience the first time they were there. But otherwise, the general feel of it is still the same. It sounds like.
Yeah, I mean our renovation, we updated a few of the colors, but
Mm.
you're still going to know you're in Oak Steakhouse. And I think, yeah, the menu, we keep the menu fun and exciting. and that will never change. So that if you want to do something other than the ribeye, there's a local fish on the menu. There's certainly local shrimp and local oysters. But yeah, I think it's like greeting your old friend. The old pair of blue jeans analogy. You throw them on, and it feels like they've never left.
That certainly makes sense. And I'm sure it feels that way to you too, because this was kind of the starting point, as you mentioned, with the expansion into not just Charleston, but everywhere else. This was really the kicking off point for, I know you obviously worked in the industry prior to that, but as far as Indigo Road and this grouping of restaurants, this was really the beginning for you.
It was, and um, we have restaurants that are 6 months old, and we have restaurants that are 20 years old. And it's interesting to me in our social media, what's the new thing, what's the trend
Mhm.
world. Um, I like going back to older restaurants that are still doing it well. I did on my podcast, my new podcast, I interviewed Mike Lotta, and I was, just saying like, I still love coming to Fig and eating the chicken liver
Yeah.
pate. So I'm very grateful for the foundation that Oak Steakhouse laid for what has become the Indigo Road. I mean, and we sort of will always remain true to the foundation. Oak Steakhouse on Broad Street, surrounded by our neighbors that have supported us, is where it all began.
Yeah, it's what's really great about Charleston, as you obviously know, is that they will really, the community will really, really support you if they see you're doing a good job, trying hard, and bringing something to the community. They will definitely make it known that you are now theirs. You are Charleston,
Yep.
this restaurant, whatever it is. Like, just support can be amazing in this town.
Absolutely. And I think I say it often, I think it's the best small town in America. I mean, it just really, people here, we all know each other. It's small enough that we're kind of all interconnected in
Mhm.
some way. I mean, the regulars at Oak on Sunday night, I was waiting on them 25 years ago.
That's
I was
amazing.
their server 25 years ago, and now their children's children, which
Right.
makes me feel a little old. Now we have three. There are nights that we have three generations of families sitting at one of our tables, and I've been there. It's just such an honor. It's an honor to be in a city like this, and the privilege to give back to the charitable causes that are worthy. And I just love this town. I love it so much.
I'd certainly agree with you there, and the town certainly seems to love you and your concepts, and been a lot of success over these 20 years and or so. And going back to that milestone, I know that there were some events or menu celebrations that happened in January just last month. Is there anything else planned for this anniversary going on going forward?
Well, I think we've about wrapped it up. Unfortunately, we had a night that we were going to close down and serve all of our best regulars,
Mm.
and the snowstorm hit. So
Mm.
we've got to do a little rescheduling. But our Jeremiah Bacon and Vonda and all the crew, that's kind of come to an end. So we're just going to smile and enjoy the year, and hope that the winter. We had a super warm weekend, but today
Yeah.
looks like it wants to get cold again. So, yeah, we're excited for this year and for many years to come. I think the great thing about a restaurant like Oak is if we continue to deliver quality and hospitality, I think that restaurant could be there 50 years from now. I really do.
I don't doubt that. I mean, we're already at the 20-year mark, and as you
Yep.
know, it's tough for restaurants in Charleston sometimes. But once you're in and doing well, there's some that end up, maybe going away. But when you're just like you said, solid, whether it's the food and the service and everything around it, people are going to keep coming back and back. And it sounds like there's no stopping that, with people and Oak. And you mentioned before seeing people over and over again over the years, and then their families. They have kids, grandkids, and you mentioned how I forget the exact word you used, but you were honored. It was special to do that, and that's got to be special too, because just like I'm sure when through the years for you, there's a restaurant or a handful of restaurants that you and your family or you and romantic partners or friends or whatever go to over and over again, and those places become so special to you. So to have people that's like a special place for their families with good memories or celebrations, that's got to be really cool to see. Them coming back and making those memories in a restaurant that you're part of.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's gratifying at a level that's hard to explain. I mean, a lot of these families have become dear friends. And, they've watched me grow up. I mean, I was 20 years old when I moved to Charleston. I was a kid. And,
Mm,
it's just really special. And I don't think you get that when you're in bigger cities. I mean, not that you don't
right.
get long-term restaurants and regulars, but that level of intimacy, and watching Charleston as a whole change in the
Mm.
last 35 years, it's just been wild.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been here, I think 18 years now, and yeah, it's crazy how much things have changed even in that time frame. But there's also those stalwarts that are still around since I've been here
Mm-hmm.
and before I was here, and Oak's one of them, of course.
Yep.
So for people, I'll ask you in a moment if there's anything else going on about your restaurants or Oak in general. But for anyone listening, you're like, hey, I got to get back to Oak. What's the best place to get information or set reservations?
Yeah, at oaksteakhouse.com, or the indigoroad.com. And we're always there, and we can't wait to see you, and come back and remind yourself of what a special place Oak is. It really, really is. And it has very little to do with me and everything to do with the amazing staff that is there.
And anything else, whether it's with Oak or any of the other restaurants or properties or anything you've got going on that you want to plug or talk about, including your podcast, if you want to
Yeah,
let people
oh
know where
yeah,
to do
sure.
that.
Yeah, so I started a podcast. I released a book called Say
Mhm.
Grace, How
Very
the
good book.
Restaurant Industry. Oh, thank you. And really, one of the big drivers was to grow Ben's Friends, which is
Mm,
our Mickey Baxton and I's a nonprofit around drug addiction, drug and alcohol addiction support. And so, what's kind of cool in the last 3 to 5 years in our industry is like suddenly mental health is like not only a conversation, it's a very accepted conversation, it's a very
mhm,
welcome conversation. So I decided to start a podcast, called Say Grace. And yeah, we're gonna have chefs on to talk about their restaurants, but like I've known Mike Lotta a long time, and
mhm,
Mike and I were at a conference in Raleigh last fall, and something was just different about Mike. His energy, he seemed more at peace, and he seemed, just like he was just really comfortable with himself and where he is in his life. And I asked him about it, and he said, "Well, I haven't had a drink in 2 years."
ah,
And so that kind of opened up a conversation about, and Mike and I's path around that subject is very different, but that kind of was like, man, I really just I love conversation.
mhm.
I'm definitely an extrovert, and I get a lot of satisfaction just on knowing people. And so I was like, I'm going to do a podcast called Say Grace. And so the first episode dropped last week. Mike Lotta is the first guest. Um, and we've got a pretty fun lineup. We've got about 20 folks scheduled to interview that are regional. Some are in New York, some are in Chicago. They'll drop every other week, and the subtext is always growing awareness around Ben's Friends,
Mm.
because we want Mickey and I, and Mickey is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for Ben's Friends because my day job is so demanding. But
Sure. Yeah.
we're in 25 cities now, 21 Zoom meetings
Wow.
on a week. And I mean, we want to be in every state in America. If somebody is in hospitality and struggling with addiction, we want there to be a Ben's Friends meeting in that town that they can go meet like-minded people. So that's a very long-winded plug to Say Grace the podcast, but thanks for giving me the space.
Oh, of course. And all the things we've mentioned, whether Oak or Ben's Friends, the podcast, I'll have links in the show notes. So anybody listening, you can just go visit those if you want to quickly click over to the websites or subscribe to his podcast. So we'll have all that in the show notes as well. I just want to say thanks for talking to me today. I'm a fan of your restaurants and the work you do with Ben's Friends, and your book, as I mentioned, was great. I have it, and I need to reread it actually because it's been a couple of years since it came out, and it was a good read. And so I just greatly appreciate you taking the time to come on and chat with me about all this.
Well, thank you. I appreciate what you do to promote our local community and to be a very valued and important voice in Charleston. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Well, again, thank you so much for joining me. And everyone, visit the link in the show or the links in the show notes so you can make sure you get up to date on everything we talked about. Thanks again, Steve. I appreciate it.
You bet. Have a great day.
And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again to Steve Palmer for stopping by. If you like this show, please rate, review, like, subscribe, all that good stuff that you can do on whatever platform you're currently listening on. I greatly appreciate it. I also want to say I appreciate Lindsay Marie Collins, who edits this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio, and also Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. I'll be back with you on Friday. I'm already looking forward to it. Until then, though, good night and good luck.